Oh, goody.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we're back with another Marvel Snap video. So today we're going over everything you need to know about the new limited time game mode releasing today, Sanctum Showdown. So we're going to talk about the mode, we're going to talk about how it works, what you can get from it. I have some day one decks that I think are really good that have been tested in the mode via a simulation, which was pretty cool. And then I'm going to give some overall thoughts on the mode itself and how I expect to see things kind of play out with it over the 2-week period. Also going to talk a bit about expected value. Is it going to be worth spending 40 gold on a ticket to get more of the rewards in this event, or are you better off saving that gold for something else? And then I'm going to have some general thoughts on the mode, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and kind of how I expect this mode to go throughout its life cycle. Before we dive into everything though, I do want to give 2 reminders here. One, there are Twitch drops currently. And these Twitch drops are going to give you a lot of new stuff for the mode. One of the rewards here is going to be 1,000 of the reward currency. Now you might see in the bottom right here, the portal pull, which is containing the 3 new cards in the mode, costs 1,200 of the reward currency. So if you do the Twitch drops, you essentially get most of the way to a new card, which I think is a really great addition. So make sure to get those drops done while you can. I believe they're only going to be live during the first week of the event. And by the time this video goes live, I will be live and you can go to Twitch to get your drops. The other big thing I think is a good reminder here is to wait for the series drops to redeem any of the card pulls that are not the portal pull new cards. And the reason for this is simple. The series drop happens on March 4th. If you do not own some of the cards that are in the series drop, and you go to redeem that random Series 4 or Series 5 card, you might get a card that is dropping. Now, if you get a card that's dropping from Series 5 to Series 4, probably doesn't matter quite as much because you would have had a similar chance of getting the card anyway. I don't think it's weighted in any way, so that one doesn't matter quite as much. However, if it is a card that is going from Series 4 to Series 3, that's effectively a card you're going to get for free very quickly and not something you want to have the chance of risking your valuable rewards currency on. So if you're missing any of the cards that are dropping from Series 4 to Series 3, I would highly recommend not using your currency on the random option for a card until the series drops happen on March 4th. With that out of the way, let's take a look at Sanctum, talk about how this mode works, as well as the best decks to make use of in it. So here is the rules for Sanctum. On turn 1 and turn 2, there will be a random Sanctum location. The Sanctum location is just worth 1 point on these first 2 turns. And the Sanctum can be in an unrevealed location. So the Sanctum can be anywhere on the board, but it is only worth 1 point, and the other locations are worth 0 points during turns 1 and 2. Turn 3 is where the game really begins. Those initial early points, sometimes they matter, but most of the time in my practicing, it was really turn 3, turn 4 that were like kind of the big swing turns. Starting on turn 3, the Sanctum becomes worth 4 points a turn, while the other non-Sanctum locations are worth 1 point a turn. This also introduces the ability to snap, where you can press the little green spell icon where the cube normally is, and that will add 1 point to the Sanctum. Your opponent can also snap and add a point to the Sanctum as well, so the Sanctum can be worth a maximum of 6 points. This does not affect the other locations. The extra points added from the snap are only active that turn, so the Sanctum will go back to 4 on the following turn. However, one of the twists of this mode is the fact that you can snap multiple times. So even if you snap, let's say on turn 3, make that Sanctum worth more points, when it goes to turn 4, if you feel you have a good chance of winning that new Sanctum location, you can snap again and increase the total again, which it's only for that turn, but this is a way you can rack up extra points. Retreating is also pretty much a non-factor in this mode. You really have nothing to gain by retreating. So how do you win the mode? You win the mode by being the first player to get to 16 or more points. These points are converted 1-to-1 into the reward currency. So you get 16 points winning a game, you have 16 of the reward currency to use in the shop. You can get more than 16 points in a game. We also have some stuff here clarifying what happens with ties. If 2 players have 16 or more points, the player with the highest points total wins. If the score is tied above 16, it's a tie, and no one gets the scroll, they just get their points. So If you win the game, you get your scroll back and you can re-enter. If you lose the game, you lose your scroll, and you will either have to wait for a new one or you can purchase a new one for 40 gold. Now, some scrolls are also going to be available through Twitch drops, so that's another way to get more of them. They're going to start you out with some, and I believe there is some kind of ranking system to this that's going to give you some milestone rewards. That wasn't something they really detailed very much in the pre-release information I had access to, so we'll have to wait and see on that together what that looks like, but that should be another way of accumulating some more scrolls. And so yeah, that's the mode. You're just trying to get the most points possible, and those points are going to be converted directly into your rewards currency to get the various things in the shop. So what exactly is in the shop for this mode? There was a lot of stuff in the shop for this mode. So here you can see all the different things that are going to be in here. You have a bunch of cosmetics, you have borders, you have emotes, you have credits. But the main things that were catching a lot of people's eyes were the unowned Series 4 and 5 card, as well as the new cards available via the portal pull. This is what I imagine most people will be going for, and this is what I would personally recommend going for, because these are the most valuable things in the game in terms of letting you play new things, and just nothing is really worth as much as getting cards in Marvel Snap. Now, maybe you like some of the cosmetic stuff and you want to go for that. If you do, be my guest, but I think most people are going to be interested in the cards. And so the cost of the rewards here, it's 1,200 for one of the new cards, which are Series 4 cards. They're going to be debuting in Series 4 in the token shop once the event ends in 2 weeks. And then you have the unowned Series 4/5 card slot, which is 2250 of the reward currency. That is pretty expensive. It's essentially double the price of the portal pull. Now, how valuable this stuff is going to be to you is going to vary a bit. Like I said at the start, if you are missing some of the Series 4 cards that are dropping to Series 3, I would highly encourage you not to spend any of your currency on that unowned card slot until the series drops happen, so you avoid a unfortunate circumstance of pulling a card that's going to drop and you're going to get for free anyway. I think that would feel really bad, especially with how much currency these cost, because these are pretty expensive. Now, a while ago, it was asked on the Discord what they expected people to earn in the mode, and I think they said roughly if you're someone who uses all of your free tickets, and I don't think this was accounting for the Twitch drop ones, because I don't think those were factored into it yet, but if you used all your regular free tickets in the mode, and you had a average 50% win rate, I think they said you would be expected to get like 2 of the 3 new cards, which if we're looking at the values here, 1,200 for 2 of the new cards, that's essentially one of the unowned cards. Now that's being fully free to play and averaging a 50% win rate and only using the free tickets the game gave you. If you have a higher win rate, if you buy a few tickets, if you use those extra tickets from Twitch drops, maybe you'll have a bit higher, but that was the expectation they kind of set here. So even though it's technically possible to get all 3 new cards and 4 Series 4/5 cards you don't own, I don't think that will apply to very many players. For those of you who are interested in the cosmetics, it is worth noting that they have said none of the cosmetics in this mode are going to be exclusive to the mode. So if you're worried about that FOMO, missing out on something you see here that you really like, it sounds like pretty much everything that is a new cosmetic here will be available through some other means in the future. It's also been mentioned that you can apparently buy stuff from the Sanctum shop for gold as well, but I have no idea what those gold prices look like. My guess is they're going to be pretty high, and much higher than the rates we're going to be able to get the tickets at, because I think they'd prefer you buy a ticket to play more of the mode and get currency through that, but they are going to have that gold option there to just straight buy stuff from the store, and that's one of their kind of whale incentives, right? If you're a whale who doesn't really want to engage with this mode, there's an out for you. If you really love the green glyphs border that's new with the mode and you want to bling out a bunch of your cards with that, but you don't want to grind the mode a bunch, well, there's going to be a gold option. Again, I think it's going to be prohibitively expensive for the mass majority of players. I don't think that's something most players are going to engage with, but I did want to mention that because we do know that is going to be a thing, just not the exact gold pricing amounts. One of the big questions I've gotten a lot of is, how about the expected value of this? Unlike the other modes before it, where you could pretty easily get all the rewards without having to pay any money or any gold, this event has more stuff in the shop than you can realistically ever purchase, especially because a bunch of them have an infinity amount of stockpile. So this is the first mode where I think you will see more people actually spending gold on the tickets to get more of the stuff in the shop, because it's not possible to just free to play and get everything here. It just isn't possible like the other modes were. And I think that's kind of part of the point of the mode, is to make it more like a carnival style system where you just keep going in for more and more prizes. There's not really a limit to it. But the question I've gotten a lot of is, well, is it actually worth my resources to do that as opposed to saving for a bundle? Like the anti-venom bundle, I had a lot of people wondering if it was worth getting that or if they should save their gold for the mode. And I think this is going to be something that varies a lot per player. A big part of this question is, how many cards are you missing in Series 4 and 5? And how many of those cards that you're missing do you actually want to own versus you don't really care about owning and playing with? And then the other part of the question obviously is going to be how much you care about the new Series 4 cards, Uncle Ben, Laufey, and Gorgon. Personally, I care about those more than the few Series 4 and 5 that I'm missing, so that's what I'm going to be targeting with my event rewards currency first. But maybe you're not as interested in those cards as you are at filling out your collection. And worth noting, you can't get the portal pull cards from that random slot because they are not in the random pool yet. Here's the thing. I think this mode can be decent value for your gold for getting cards. But there is one aspect of it that reduces that value quite a bit, and it's essentially how many cards you're missing. Because a lot of people are missing a good chunk of Series 4 and 5 cards. So even though this mode might give you a bit of a better rate on gold per card, you are losing out on that agency of getting the card that you actually want. So let's do a little bit of math here to illustrate my point. If you want to get a new Series 5 card of your choice, it costs you 6,000 collector's tokens. If you have 0 collector's tokens and you go to buy them in the store, the default rate for getting 6,000 collector's tokens is 8,000 gold. Now, you can get better rates in the game by buying bundles, stuff like that, but I'm just going to use the raw rate here to do a bit of simple math. So it can be better than this with bundles, but it's not crazy better than this. It's like a bit better than this, but we're going to use the raw numbers here just to illustrate the point. So we have 8,000 gold. Now, in theory, what if you were to spend 8,000 gold on this mode? So tickets cost 40 gold. Let's see, how many tickets does 8,000 gold get us? It gets us 200 tickets. Now, this is another part of the equation that's going to vary massively depending on you as a player. If you're a really good player and you win more than average, you're going to get a lot more mileage and a lot more points out of these 200 tickets than someone who is an average player or below average player. So that is definitely something that's going to be factored in here, is your skill as a player. This is the first real thing in Marvel Snap that I think is actually rewarding you for being more competitively focused. Deadpool's Diner, there was a little bit of that, but nowhere near to this extent. Anyway, let's say you're on average winning 50% of your games. So each of these tickets is getting you at least 16 because you're getting that one win. And let's say you lose the second game, but you still get some points. So let's say you get 16 in your first game on average and 10 in the follow-up game where you lose. So that's 26 points per ticket. And if we do a little bit more math here, we take that 200, multiply it by 26, and we get 5,200 of the rewards currency. Now, this number might be a little bit higher or a little bit lower depending on what your average is and depending on what your win rate is. But this is going off of, I think, a fairly average number of points and a literal 50% average win rate. So 5,200 points, what can you do with that amount of points? Well, you could get 2 of the unowned Series 4/5 cards. That would total you 450, and then you'd be left with 700 left over. So you could get maybe one of the cosmetic things, or you could try and grind out a little more, or you could try and grind out a little bit more, or maybe use some of those bonus tickets from Twitch drops to try and make your way to that 1200 for one of the portal pulls. But if you were essentially going to spend 8,000 gold, what it costs to get that 6,000 tokens on tickets instead, you would essentially be getting a bit over 2 unowned Series 4/5 cards. So it's like, wow, 2x value, that's pretty good, right? And that's only with the average win rate. If you have above average, you get even more potentially. Here's the thing though, a random Series 4/5 card, I think, is worth a lot less than the one you actually want to play and plan to use. And that's where I think this system gets you, but it's a bit more generous in terms of the amount you get, but you have no agency over what you're getting. Now, maybe you're only missing a few cards. If you're only missing a few cards, then this could be very high value to you if you actually want those cards. But if you're someone who's missing 10, 20, 30 Series 4 and 5 cards, I'm not sure it would actually be better to get 2 cards randomly than it would be to get 1 card guaranteed that you actually know you want to play with. Now, if you're really interested in the new cards from the portal pull, those seem like a really no-brainer to target. You're guaranteed to get one of those 3. Once you get enough points for all 3, you have them guaranteed. There's not really much messing with the pool there. But I think for most players, their pool of 4 and 5 cards is going to be pretty large, and unless you're wanting most of the cards you're missing, the odds of you actually getting the card that you want are gonna be fairly low. So basically, the TLDR and expected value for me is the value is there in terms of quantity, but it's really up to you to determine if the quality is worth it, because maybe you don't feel as good about spending all these resources on the tickets and getting these because maybe you won't feel so good about this if you spend all these resources to get tickets, you play the mode a bunch, you get these unknown cards, and all of a sudden Bruce Banner's popping out instead of the gore you were looking for. So I do think the randomness is a pretty big downside for anyone who has a lot of cards they are uninterested in the pool. And I think that should be a big factor in terms of, hey, should I spend resources on this mode? I think if you're missing a lot of cards here, you might just be better off using that resource to accumulate credits for future keys or accumulate tokens to guarantee get those specific cards you're looking for. Because if you're missing a lot of cards, the odds of you getting that specific card from this shop are very low. You could take that gamble, and maybe, who knows? I'm sure for some people it will pay off and they will do it. And you know, if it works out, it works out, great. But statistically, if you're missing a lot of cards and you aren't actually interested in a lot of those cards, I do think that has a pretty negative effect on the expected value of this mode. And I'd be less inclined to want to put gold into it as a result of that. So hopefully that helps a bit on expected value. I'm sure a lot more people are going to do a lot deeper math than I am here. But this is, you know, just for day one, some initial impressions and my thoughts on the value overall. It's something I'm going to put some gold into and grind out because, well, people want to see it. It's content. And I think it would be kind of cool if I could grind out the 2 cards I'm missing in this mode, Hulkling and Bruce Banner. Would be kind of fun. But it's not something where if I was a free-to-play player or pass-only player, I would not be putting gold into this mode because I just don't think those cards are really worth the asking price in general, because it still does cost a fair chunk of gold to accumulate this because most of my free points and free tickets are probably going towards that portal pull first. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the expected value. I'd recommend aiming for the cards, but definitely keep this in mind. I think it's better to go for the portal pull because I think all 3 of these cards, Gorgon, Laufey, and Uncle Ben, are pretty decent cards that will all end up finding a home. And yeah, I think they're just very solid overall, and the pool is limited, so you know what you're getting, whereas the unknown pool is much more of a gamble, especially if you're missing a lot of cards. But do what you think is best, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of information to go off of in terms of how exactly worth it is it to spend my gold, because it's going to vary person to person. Next up, I wanted to talk a little bit about the banned cards, as well as the cards I think are going to be best in this mode. So, like I said at the start, I did a little bit of testing with this mode, with Safety Blade, He developed a little program so we could simulate, here's where the Sanctum is, here's where it's going, we can track your points. So it was very close to the experience we're going to be getting here. Obviously, in normal Marvel Snap without magic, you can't get to turn 7, so we had to do a bit of manual calculation there for games that went a little bit longer. But generally speaking, we were able to get a pretty good idea of how the mode functions, as well as what things were good in it and what things were not good in it. So here are, I think, the 12 best cards in this mode. Some are going to be better than others, but you might notice that the cards here are skewed to much cheaper costing cards. This is a mode where having high power for low cost matters a lot. In general, one question I've gotten a lot after testing is, how long are the average games? Did you find games are ending earlier or going to turn 7 more often? And we played for a good few hours, and in general, most of the games went to turn 6. There were a handful that went to turn 7. That was probably our second most likely outcome, and a very small amount that went to turn 5. I think we maybe had one game that was a 4-turn game over hours and hours of play. So in general, a lot of the games are going to be very similar to a normal game of Marvel Snap with 6 turns. And the second most common outcome was extending the game by one more turn to turn 7. So keep that in mind. But these are the cards I think are going to be best for the mode. In terms of just absolute overperformers, I think the 2 best cards on this list have got to be Cannonball. Cannonball, I don't know how this card wasn't banned. They banned Juggernaut, they banned Clog Stuff, but Cannonball is going to go into every deck in this mode. I'm pretty convinced. Just the ability to put down a lot of points in a lane while taking your opponent's biggest thing out of the lane. But yeah, Cannonball just is insane in this mode. He puts down a large amount of points. He removes the opponent's biggest thing. Sometimes it clogs them up, which can be annoying for them too, but mainly it's just the biggest point swing you can have while also putting points on the board yourself. I'm very surprised this card didn't get banned, and I expect it to go pretty much in every deck in this mode. Well, if you don't have Cannonball, it might be wise to save up those tickets, wait for him to drop via the series drop, and scoop him up for 3k tokens on March 4th, because I think this is going to be a make or break card in the mode. The other card, and this is more speaking to an archetype than just the card itself, is Scream. Scream is just absurd in this mode. Scream, already one of the best decks in the game in regular Marble Snap, but the whole thing of what the Scream deck tries to do is displace your opponent's power while profiting off of it. That's really, really good in a mode that is all about the importance of where you are placing your cards and wanting to have that flexibility to move cards elsewhere. Scream just feels like it was designed to wreak havoc on this mode. And I think that's exactly what it is going to do. It's just, Scream plays very efficiently statted cards, it has good scaling, and it messes with where your opponent's cards are being played, which is a key point of how you get points in the Sanctum mode. It matters a lot where you play your cards. It plays fairly differently. Like what you prioritize in this mode feels very different than a regular game of Marvel Snap, where you just need to have the 2 biggest points at the end to win. This is much more about prioritizing individual power turn to turn on a given lane, and Scream just disrupts that massively while getting a really strong payoff for it. So expect to see a lot of Scream in this mode. The other standouts here I want to mention are Sam Wilson and Iron Patriot. Sam Wilson is an insane amount of advantage in this mode. I think if you are not a Season Pass buyer, you might be a bit sad playing this mode, because this card in the games we tested, it like Cannonball probably goes in every deck or almost every deck. The big things about it are, one, the shield being on board can be a huge difference maker in the early turns. Sometimes it'll yoink you a free point from the Sanctum location on turn 1 or turn 2 if your opponent doesn't have a play or you don't have a play. That can be pretty good, just getting that free point. But the main reason it's good is because of things like, well, let's say on turn 3, you and your opponent, neither of you have played a card into this now new Sanctum lane. If you have the shield there and you both play a card of the same size because, well, Let's be honest. I think a lot of people are going to be playing similar cards in this mode, because I think it's going to be figured out very quickly which cards are good in it. That Sam Wilson 1-point shield can make all the difference in terms of you getting a big lead. It can get you that early 4-point or more if you snap lead. And that matters a ton. And then on top of it, you have him being able to be a scalable threat that moves the shield around for that extra 1 point in other locations, or just getting you a good scaling 2-drop. So I think this card is very, very strong for the mode, and is basically going to be almost an auto include if you have it. Iron Patriot is a similar dynamic where it's just a good 2-drop play, but the neat thing about this is if you play the Iron Patriot into the 1-point Sanctum lane on turn 2, and then the Sanctum moves somewhere else, your opponent ends up in a bit of a weird spot where they have to decide, do I want to play for the lane with more points, or do I want to deny the Iron Patriot? Because if they don't deny the Iron Patriot, then you get this big cost reduction card, which can be really good for helping you win future Sanctum lanes. So yeah, Iron Patriot's a very high tempo card. It gets you some of the best mana cheating in the game, and I think it's going to be an all-star in this mode as a result of it. Other than that, a lot of the other inclusions here I think are fairly straightforward. Cull goes really well with Sam Wilson, and in general just is a very solid 4-10 where the restriction isn't too bad. Stegron is Cannonball at home, just knocking something out of your opponent's lane. Obviously, it won't work on the right lane, but it's still a good amount of power. It still disrupts where your opponent is playing their cards, which matters a lot. Gladiator, I think, is going to be great because most of the decks in this mode, I think, are going to be concentrated around lower power cards. At least that was the experience in our playtesting. So I think the downside of Gladiator will be very little in this mode, and just having a 3-8 is really big upside. Makari's a 0-4, good with Iron Patriot, good for winning early Sanctum locations, pretty self-explanatory. Rocket and Groot is an absolute menace because he makes it hard for your opponent to play into a location, and then you also have the benefit of moving into another location. Very few cards do that in the game in general, and Rocket and Groot just does it the most profitably because it can steal points from one lane, help you win that lane, and then move to another lane and steal even more points. So big high value there. Bob and Rocket Raccoon are just the best points you can have in the early game, or just something to weave in alongside a 2-drop or a 3-drop. So that's why they're there. And the one inclusion here that might be questionable is Doctor Strange. And no, he's not just here because he's thematic. There can be some moments where having Doctor Strange as a bit of a tech card can be very, very powerful, because if you devote a big, powerful card to winning a lane on turn 3 or turn 4, being able to just yoink that card over to the new Sanctum lane on the following turn can be enough to absolutely just swing and win that lane. So I do think he is going to be a pretty powerful card here as a result of that. So yeah, those are what I think are the top cards of the mode, in my opinion. Now let's take a look at the decks. First up, we have Scream. Yeah, I think Scream is going to be the best deck in this game mode, if not tied for the best deck. It is incredibly powerful. Like I mentioned before, Scream just has this flexibility where you are constantly disrupting your opponent's plays while getting a payoff for doing that. Because there already is a payoff for doing that. If you disrupt their plays well enough, you're winning the Sanctum, and that's winning you the game. But you're also getting power while you do that. So really, really strong. Sam Wilson probably going to be a mainstay in this mode, so Scream will get some value there just by default, as will things like Kraven and Kingpin. So these cards that were already good probably get even better. And really, there's only one card in this list I feel like I'm not 100% certain of, which would be Miles Morales. I think Miles is pretty good at being weaved in as just a decent 1/6, because you have a lot of move effects in this deck. However, I did find like the one weakness with this deck is sometimes you want one more big threat. So I wouldn't be surprised if trying something like Cull Obsidian or something similar of that size/cost in that spot ended up being a little bit better. But in general, you have really, really efficient, good, low-cost cards that move your opponent's cards all over the board while getting a payoff while doing so. Our top end for this deck is ways of disrupting their placement with Stegron and Cannonball, which both add a meaningful amount of power to the board. It's just really good. It's just really good. I think people are going to get very frustrated at how good this deck is in this mode. It feels like a deck that was designed to take advantage of this mode, and I think it's going to do so very efficiently. You just have so many good early tempo plays. You have so many ways to disrupt where your opponent is playing their cards, and you just get very good payoffs for doing so. So if you want just the easiest deck to go into the mode with, I really think it's going to be this or a very close version of this. Next up, we have a bit of a generic good cards package, and I am going to warn you, you're going to see a lot of overlap in cards in these decks. And that, I think, is just going to be what happens in this mode. I don't think we're going to see a whole ton of deep deck diversity in this mode, because the cards that are good in it are really, really good in it, and a lot of them are not the easiest things to counter. But yeah, this is just another deck where we're just playing most of the higher quality cards we have access to. So the Guardians are actually pretty good in this mode, specifically Rocket and Star-Lord, but I know Safety was even messing around with some regular Groot stuff. The Guardians are good. The Guardians make a lot of sense in a mode where you know where it is likely your opponent is going to play their cards. Hydra Bob, best 1-drop that isn't, conditional like Rocket. We've already talked about Iron Patriot and Sam Wilson, but Kate just gives you a little bit of flexibility here. There aren't a lot of ways to clog in this mode, so that acid arrow can be even more valuable than it is normally, and the other arrows are just decent stats since we don't have a really high top end in most of these decks. Having little extra cards that we can play to get additional value and additional points can be beneficial. Rocket and Groot, All-Star, Makari's free, Gladiator's big, Cole's big. So really the only card we haven't talked about here is Copycat. I think that most of the decks we're going to be playing against in this mode are going to be running many of these just highly efficient cards with powerful effects on them. So Copycat stealing a Guardian or Rocket and Groot or Cannonball can be absolutely backbreaking and game-winning. So I think that is another card that, even though it didn't make my initial top 10 list, it really wasn't that far outside it. I think it's going to be a very, very good card to add into a lot of these decks, just because it adds this layer of unpredictability for your opponent that they can't really calculate. Then we have a Mockingbird deck. So this one started out initially as a more traditional zoo deck using things like Shauna and Khazar, but after some playtesting, it turns out you just want to jam in a lot of the good cards, and the Shield plus Squirrel Girl was often enough to make Mockingbird quite good. You don't really need to get a free Mockingbird or a 1-cost Mockingbird if you can just play Squirrel Girl and the Shield and then slam a 3/9 on turn 3, or in one of the later turns of the game. So yeah, I found Mockingbird was pretty efficient at doing that. Another card here that was pretty cool was Negasonic. This deck is pretty good at taking priority because of all the powerful early game stuff, the Makari, Squirrel Girl going wide. So being able to take prio and then get someone with Negasonic proved to be pretty effective as well in terms of fighting for the Sanctum location. So if you're a fan of zoo builds, I think this is probably how you want to build something like that. A little bit less traditional than the normal scaling buffs, but this seemed to just work better than that for this mode. Another one of the decks that I think can be a top contender in this mode is Move. And the reason for that is because Move makes a really big dude and then continues to grow the really big dude by pushing it somewhere else. And that is really efficient in a mode like this, where if you can get a big Human Torch to help win the Sanctum on turn 3, and then you yoink it over with a Ghost Spider or move it with Madam Web, that's really, really profitable. I did find that Move could be a little bit hit or miss. Obviously, because of how this game mode works, you don't really want the bounce cards that a lot of Move decks traditionally run, because you want your points still on the board. Now, it's possible you could try a build with one of the bounce cards, because maybe there is some merit to that if you're just going to give up the Sanctum one turn, bounce all your stuff back, and then be able to beat the next one. But for what I tried out, I liked not using the bounce stuff, and was able to just get a decent amount of value out of the Move cards here. We have our normal Move scalers, Human Torch, Dagger, Vulture, and then we just sprinkle in a lot of the other good cards here. Sam Wilson, Cole Obsidian, Rocket and Groot, Cannonball. These cards are just going in, I think, most decks you're playing in this mode if you have them. They are just very, very powerful and efficient cards, and they pair very well with all the move cards we have access to here. So move can be a little hit or miss. Sometimes you draw all the activators without the payoffs and vice versa, but you do find both of the cards a decent amount of the time to where it can work, and sometimes move just has total blowouts where you get a move, a vulture, 2 or 3 times, and then there's nothing your opponent can do about it because a lot of people are not going to be running tech in this mode. The closest thing to that you're going to have to worry about is probably opposing cannonballs. So yeah, move I do think is a viable option for this mode, but I do think it will feel a little bit more hit or miss than some of the other decks. But when it hits, it really does hit hard. Then we have an Affliction deck. So I'm not 100% sold on Affliction, but I think the biggest reason to run an Affliction deck in this mode is because of the card Luke Cage and because the card Scream is going to be so prevalent, as will Rocket and Groot. So I think there is reason to run a deck like this in this mode. Luke Cage is a big tempo loss, but this deck can kind of turn things around enough to where I think it can make up for that tempo loss, mainly because your opponents are often playing smaller cards, so something like Man-Thing can be a really big swing, or US Agent on a lane where they have a 4-drop, or higher cost card can be very impactful too. Scorpion gets value, the low cost good cards are still good. Miles, not 100% on Miles here. Maybe it's better as just a Cull Obsidian or another big card, but I did like the flexibility of being able to weave him in for 1 here and there. But really, the main reason to play this deck is because you get to be a Luke Cage deck, and with so much Affliction and Scream being expected in the mode, I think Luke Cage does have a shot at being a meta-relevant player here. Also, we have Diamondback releasing today, so that could be factored in here as well. Maybe you put Diamondback in the Miles spot, and then maybe you could sneak in a Hazmat or something and get a lot more value in terms of just afflicting your opponent's cards negatively. Maybe I'll try something like that once she drops, but I did find this deck surprisingly reasonable. I don't know if it'll be enough to really keep some of the Affliction things like Scream in check, but it certainly seemed at least playable against those decks, and sometimes it did really counter them. We'll have to see if that holds up over time in a larger sample size, but that was our experience with this deck in the limited testing we did. And then the last of the regular decks here we have is not Mill. So it runs a lot of the cards that we're used to seeing in Mill, but the deck has been adapted a few different ways. So it's really kind of leaning into the Sam Wilson Squirrel Girl thing to allow us to play Mockingbird, because Mockingbird's really good. Baron Zemo also seems really good in this mode, since opponents are going to be running a lot of low-cost, high-impact cards. Being able to yoink one of those with Zemo and reduce your bird seems very good. Also, Killmonger, really interesting inclusion for this mode. I had Death in here initially, but I found that we weren't really getting it cheap enough, often enough, with the cards we had here, because we obviously had to take out some traditional mill cards to make this version work and include some of the cards we want to include. But Killmonger can be a pretty lethal force, given that there are a lot of rockets and Hydra Bobs and stuff running around. I imagine many Squirrel Girls as well, so Killmonger can be a pretty lethal force. Squirrel Girl, really good at getting Prio, which is nice with Rocket and Groot. You have your big impact 2-drops, Iron Patriot, Sam Wilson. Fenris Wolf was pretty good. Either it would bring back a high impact 1-drop that got killed by Killmonger, or something that got killed by Glad. So I found that to be a surprisingly good card here. And the rest of it is really just the good cards, like we've been talking about. I wish there was a little bit more, to say there, or variety among deck building, but I really do think this is going to be a mode that promotes running as many of these good cards as possible in these various different styles of deck. It's really just taking the same core and adapting a small package to it. But this one I found to be pretty effective. I think the Killmonger had some really big moments. Baron Zemo is quite good. Getting cheap Mockingbird down, also very good. So I think this is definitely a viable way to go if you want to take this kind of direction. And last but not least, I wanted to include a budget deck because I had some people ask about that. So I tried to build a pretty budget zoo style deck that doesn't use any cards above Series 3. I did include Elsa here because Elsa was given out for free. So that was a little bit of an exception, but every other card here other than Elsa is Series 3 or below. So it's a zoo style deck. We just try and play some of the more efficient cards we have access to on curve and curve out and play points and win the game. And yeah, pretty straightforward. If you have any of the cards I showed at the start here, the best card list, I would encourage replacing cards in this deck with those cards. Like, upgrade it based on what you have. If you have Sam Wilson, you should probably be playing that over Angela or over Groot. So if you have some of those cards, I would highly recommend playing them and upgrading this deck. But I did want to include at least one deck in the video for people who are maybe newer to the game, don't have access to many of the higher series cards. This is a way you can go using mainly your lower series cards. So that's the mode. Those are the decks. Let's wrap things up here. What do I think about Sanctum Showdown? I have a few thoughts after doing quite a bit of playtesting with it. I think the concept for this mode is great. I think it was very fun to have a new way to engage with Marvel Snap, because it did legitimately feel very different than your average game of Snap in terms of how you prioritize things, the mind games, the planning for future turns. It feels different, and it feels different in a good way. So I think the actual gameplay of the mode, they cooked. It's good. It's really interesting. Where I'm a little bit less optimistic about it is I think a mode like this might have released at the wrong time in terms of, I think with some of the cards we have access to now, and particularly some of the more recent, really powerful ones in the season pass, like Sam Wilson and Iron Patriot, I think if you're missing most of the cards on the good cards list, I think you are going to have a very frustrating time with this mode. Because I think the cards that are good in this mode are just so very good at the mode that you are going to feel their absence if you do not have them. And probably more frustratingly, you are going to see endless amounts of them. I expect this to bump up the Hydra Bob discourse again. Back when everyone was complaining they didn't have Bob got nerfed. He was played a bit less. The complaints died down a bit. Hydra Bob complainers rise up, because I think if you don't have them, you're gonna feel that in this mode. But I think the ones you're gonna feel the most, though, are Iron Patriot, Sam Wilson, Scream, Cannonball, Rocket, and Groot. I think those 5 cards, if you have those 5 or some of those 5 cards, or are missing most of those 5 cards, you're going to feel that impact very harshly. And I think it is unfortunate that the cards that look like they are going to most dominate this mode, many of them are locked behind a higher series. And I think that's going to lead to a lot of frustration for newer players or players who just don't have access to these cards yet. So I kind of wish we could have gotten something like the Sanctum a year ago, when the card pool is smaller and cards like Iron Patriot and Scream and Sam Wilson and Rocket and Groot, then these cards didn't exist yet. Because I think these cards are so strong at what they do in this mode, it's going to make it pretty hard to have a lot of diversity when there are just so many good auto-include cards that you just want to put in most of the decks you're playing in this mode, because they're just so good at it. Maybe we'll see the ban list expanded. I will not be surprised if Cannonball ends up on the ban list either for the next time they run this event or maybe even halfway through. We are going to get an OTA this week, so there will be some card changes during the event. Although the way I think they lock OTAs in, I think they've probably already locked it in before the event has started, so I don't expect it to be a reactionary OTA to the event. But I think Cannonball is 100% going to get banned either sometime during the event or for the next one. That card is just too efficient at what it does. They banned Juggernaut for a reason. Cannonball kind of acting as big Juggernaut in this mode. But yeah, I like the mode, but I do think it isn't going to live up to the full potential of the gameplay, just because we have so many cards right now that are so dominant for this style of play that really pushes out being able to try a lot of other strategies. That's just my read on it after playing around with it for a while. I would like to be wrong. I kind of hope I am wrong, and that people find some ways to counter some of these most popular cards, but I think they are going to be defining the mode, at least in this first iteration of it. And also, I think this is going to be the sweatiest game mode you have ever seen in Marvel Snap. We have never really had a mode or an incentive to grind the game to get cards. The closest we had was like Deadpool's Diner, and even that a lot of people found very sweaty. This is going to be that on steroids. This is going to be that times 10, because there are more potential rewards here. Nothing is guaranteed. Like the diner, I think you at least had those grace periods where after people got all their rewards, they were donating bubs. You're not going to see that in this mode. This mode is going to be the hardest I think you have seen people try in this game ever. And they're going to be trying even harder because real stuff is on the line. Cards are on the line. Maybe they bought some tickets, so their gold is on the line. Like, people are gonna... This is not going to be a chill, casual mode. This is going to be, I think, the most try-hard mode you've ever seen in Marvel Snap. And I'm very curious to see how the community reacts to that, because traditionally, people have not really loved like when things get a little bit more stressful and a little bit more higher stakes. And I think that is going to be a pain point here as well for many players. So it's interesting. Again, like I said, I actually really think the gameplay design behind this mode is good and interesting. I just worry that with the card pool available and some of these more recently printed really powerful cards, we're not going to see as much like interesting deck building variety as I would hope to see in a unique event like this, where it really does change the fundamentals of how you play the game. But that's it. Those are my thoughts on Sanctum. Again, by the time this goes up, I'll be live streaming some Sanctum. So if you want to see it in action, check out the stream, come get your Twitch drops. Let me know what you think about all this stuff in the comments below. Are you planning to spend some gold on Sanctum to get more of the tickets? Are you going to go in fully free to play? Or are you going to kind of wait and see how the mode plays out? You can accumulate your tickets, so I don't think you have to spend them as you get them. You can stockpile them up. Maybe you're going to wait for the series drop so you can pick up Cannonball for cheaper and then play the mode. There are different strategies like that you can make use of. But that is going to wrap it up for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Links to the decks will be in the description, and hopefully I'll see you over on the live stream. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, remember to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.